Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the 5 income streams I had to generate whilst I was a non-funded PhD student. So without further ado, why don't we start with these 5 streams? Number one is the one that you probably guessed, which is teaching and demonstrating. So for those who may not know, my PhD was a wet lab-based PhD. So I had the opportunity to work in the undergraduate laboratories and assist the academics who were doing the teaching on biomedical science or pharmacy, and those are the related courses to my PhD. So I got the opportunity to help demonstrate those practicals that you get whilst you are an undergrad. So this was a good source of income for me whilst I was a non-funded PhD. I had no stipend, I had no salary, so I had to try and survive on these streams I'm going to be sharing in today's video. And this was great because during the academic year there was a lot of practicals, and the beauty of my PhD was that a lot of it was medicinal chemistry, so I had ties and networks with the pharmacy and the School of Pharmacy and those courses, as well as a bit of pharmacology, which was actually related to biomedical science at the time. So I had a wide range of mixtures in terms of courses and academics that I could actually demonstrate for. Now, unfortunately, as a PhD student at my university, the one that I did my PhD in, which was De Montfort University, we were not allowed to give actual lectures. Now, there was annoyances because some particular PhD students were allowed to do so and others, but besides the point, we could only demonstrate. Now, the best we could do was lead the practical and then mark the actual coursework. That grade gave a higher grade of payment, whereas just demonstrating and assisting on the practicals gave a slightly lower grade. But we had a good amount of batch in the first term, good amount of batch in the second term, so it was around about, I think it was 14 or 15 pound an hour, I'll leave it up here, for grade B, which is just assisting on the practical, and close to 20 pound an hour for actually leading the practical and then marking the coursework. Now the beauty is that for many of these courseworks and these practicals and these assignments, I was able to help out quite a bit, and generally most practicals are about 4 hours. And sometimes you have two 4 hour practicals in one day, one in the morning, 9 till 1, and one in the afternoon, 2 till 6. So this allowed me to generate a decent amount of income to help me survive as I went along. Now the cons is that it can be quite sporadic across the year. It's not consistent, as we know with teaching. You got a lot of teaching in maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then you get nothing for 1 or 2 months. So I had to factor that in whilst I was doing these demonstrations, and because a lot of the time, a lot of these demonstrations and practicals are in 1 week, you can't really do much lab work of your own or much PhD work of your own during that week, because you might have back to back to back to back to back to back. You might have a lot of protocols in a week, so you kind of stretch around time in those intense periods. But the pay is quite good, and I would advise any of you who are not doing any teaching at the moment, even if you don't want to become a lecturer, it's a good source of revenue, good source of income to help you, because we know times are hard as a PhD student. If you even do get a stipend, and if you don't, it's not easy. Hence why I'm making this video. But let's look at step number 2. So number 2 is all about what I like to call a part-time research assistant roles at universities around the world. Now, when I did my PhD at De Montfort University, it had something called a front runner program. Now, it was just a name given to this rationale and this idea of giving opportunities to those who are students, undergrad, masters, or PhD student, and helping them to actually get into the world of work, because we know research can be seen as a form of work. So these were placements around university, in the different departments, in HR, in front of house, in the library, but also in laboratories. So I kind of jumped on this scheme as one, a way to try and get experience to maybe help me in terms of my PhD. But let's be honest, primarily it was to help generate another source of income for me to survive, because I wasn't getting paid, or no stipend was coming into my bank account every month. So the way it worked, it was around about 8 hours a week, about £8 and £9 an hour, and for about 6 to 9 months. What I do remember, I was getting around about maybe £200-300 a month for this temporary period. So it did actually help a bit where possible. Now, the unfortunate thing is, as with anything, is it's still a role. It's not just that you can just grab £300 and then carry the PhD. You had to do the work still. So thankfully I got a lot of help where my supervisors used to put out placements, but then I could apply for. So they helped me from that sense, which I really appreciate. But many of the other placements where I had to actually do the work, so 8 hours a week, which is nearly a full day, maybe on a Saturday or maybe during the weekday, I had to dedicate to that in order to earn a living. So it was 1 day a week technically that I was losing, but again gaining for that time. And this is where I wanted to share that doing a non-funded PhD can be really detrimental, because that day I lost that in terms of PhD time, where I could have put to writing another grant, going to a conference, writing a paper, which is a more important thing. So although this video is about how to potentially survive, I'm not suggesting you should go do a non-funded PhD program and then do these 5 income streams. It is something that I had to do in order to make ends meet, and hopefully sharing that might be able to help you get over the line if you're financially struggling where possible. But part-time placements, have a look at it at university. They will be there in some capacity. It doesn't have to be in the lab, but any part-time placement role internally is something you may want to look into to try and help in terms of techniques possibly, but as another source of income. Believe it or not, I used to work at a cinema known as Showcase. Showcase Cinema De Lux is the proper title. So during the early phases of my PhD, around about I think first year to middle of second year, I was doing income stream number 1, teaching, stream number 2, placement, and this at the same time. So I used to work in the evenings quite often, most days during the early parts of my PhD at Showcase. Now, the annoying thing is that it was minimum wage. The job was really simple, really easy. I was a usher, so all I used to do really was rip tickets, align, queues in for those bigger screens, the bigger movies, and then once the movie is finished, I would go in with the rest of my team, and we would pick up all the rubbish and get rid of all the drinks and make sure it's tidy enough for the next stack of people coming in to watch a movie. So in terms of and mental energy wise, it wasn't very, very difficult, but I used to work a lot in the evenings till 12 at night, till 1 in the morning, and sometimes till 3 in the morning, and then come back in the morning to carry on the PhD. So my evenings are gone. I try and get as much PhD time done, or work done during those daytimes, and then sometimes in the early phase of my PhD, I was there making I think £5 or £6 an hour where I could to make ends meet. And unfortunately, a lot of that money at the time was used to pay for my parking for the first year, because I didn't know much about best places to park. So I got a permit to park in the town centre because I was working technically in the town, in the actual shopping centre. And a lot of my money was to be able to park, so then I could actually go to university and use that same parking to park for my part-time job, but also to park for going to the labs and to the university because it was actually quite close. But as you can imagine, doing the PhD, teaching, the part-time placement, and that was a lot. And that's why towards the second year I had to let the Showcase go, because it was a 0-hour contract and they weren't budging on me saying, look, I can only work certain days, because my week was changing every week, depending on the lab work, depending on the teaching, and they wanted me to prioritize that job. And I said no. So we had a disagreement, and it turned out that I had to leave. I actually, believe it or not, went back towards the middle of my third year for a few months just to try and earn a bit more, and they allowed me to come back, which was great. But yeah, I wasn't there for too long because, again, it was not feasible because they weren't giving me a rigid structure, unfortunately. But yeah, number 4. What was number 4? I'm just joking. I know what number 4 is. I've got my script. I've got my iMac here. I've got my iPad here, and I've got my brain. But number 4 is actually open days. So I used to work on the university open days, which was maybe around about 7, 8 times, maybe close to 10 times a year. It wasn't every month, but it was a good amount of money in terms of half a day, because they used to do a time and a half. So you used to come in about 7:30, 8. I used to struggle to do that, as you know. You used to come in around about 8 and finish around about 3, half 3 on a Saturday. And you used to get around about £75 to £80 per open day. So it's a good extra bit of cash. Sometimes I used to stay later on in that day because I actually was doing some lab work, perhaps on out of hours, so on the weekends. So it was fairly decent. I tried to something get away by starting an experiment in the morning, letting it run, and then carrying on after, trying to shave as many hours as I could. But that was another potential income stream that did help, just to bump up a little bit. Extra cash is always helpful, and I used to do that quite a bit. But towards the end of my PhD, it was a bit difficult because I needed my time. I needed as much time as I get to write, to finish, and even to do lab work, believe it or not. So towards the end, that had to go as well, which is difficult. But that was another income stream that I actually found quite helpful, especially during the middle phase of my PhD, where things were fairly settled to a point. But yeah, that was considered, especially if you are at a university. Open days, you just want a little bit extra cash and don't want to embark on too much time. I would definitely consider that. It's simple money, it's easy money in the sense of you're just promoting the university. If you do like it, sometimes you might have to lie a bit. Let's be honest, we may not like our university, but it was a great opportunity just to share, your experiences about being an undergrad perhaps, or doing research as a PhD student. And sometimes a lot of the roles in the open day is just you just directing people, and that's quite simple as well. So you could look into that. I would definitely advise open day as a balance between not much time needed and a little bit extra cash is always helpful. But now income number 5 is something that's gonna blow your mind, something you probably wouldn't even imagine that I did. But believe it or not, it's something that I had to do, especially in the early phase of my PhD. So income generation number 5 was all about me being a football linesman. Yep, for especially the first 6 months of my PhD, I was a football coach prior. Whilst I was doing my undergrad, I was helping out in a football club near where I live. And because I just started my PhD, times were hard, things were difficult. I think just got my showcase job. So this was especially first 3 months, first 4 months, and life was hard. Life was difficult, and I think nearly every other Saturday, I was just getting £10 just for 1 hour. Not £10 an hour, £10 for 1 hour, because football match was nearly 1 hour, and this was about under eights, under tens, 11s, and I was trying to get the money from there, right? So then what I used to do is just be a linesman, but I was awful. I kid you not. I play football. I would say I know how to play. I'm not amazing, but I know how to play. But I was an awful linesman because I was primarily doing it for the money, right? £10 is £10, right? You don't do much on the weekend. And I still remember the day. I'm gonna share the story that I think it was under 12s and 13. So these are very kind of erratic teenagers who want to win, and they're old enough, to say what they want to say. And I made a horrendous call on offside. If you know football or soccer from where you are, um, I didn't know the offside rule too much, right? And I was nervous. I was not as confident as I am now. I was still, a little bit shy. Still am, but not as who I am now. And it was a very precious situation. So I put my hats off to, international referees and the team. And I wasn't looking properly, and the guy was way offside. But because I didn't flag it up offside, the opposing team scored and then they won, and I was given a lot of heckle, a lot of abuse. Then and the day after when they had their training session. So yeah, it was horrendous. It was awful, and I think I stopped doing it because of that. But that was an income stream for a good few months. I was just getting £10 here and there just to make ends meet, and it was hard, but that was actually classed as an income stream, and it just gives you an idea. The reason I want to share, it gives you an idea of the level I had to go to try and how dedicated I was to try and make sure I had each month I would make ends meet and I would make things possible. And I got through it. Thankfully now I'm doing well. Jobs are okay, but during my PhD, because I didn't get that stipend of around maybe 1k, 1.2k, depending on which university you are, where you are in the world, it made things a lot more difficult, and it made doing the things that I'm trying to do now, 3 or 4 years later, a lot harder because I should have done those things whilst I was a PhD student, and I should have had the time, but I didn't. Which is why I always recommend always do a PhD if you are fully funded. If you don't, it can be potential career suicide. I'll use that term particularly. It can be that bad, unfortunately. So just to add a little bit of spice on top, just a little bit extra spice on this video of income generations. I wouldn't say it was a consistent form of income, but a lot of the times what I used to do as well is if I was successful in conferences and awards, which I was, and I was very thankful for, that prize money wasn't used to buy something new. It was used to help me pay for my bills the next month. And I always remember this, where if I can find it, I'll put it up here. This was this poster that I came runner-up in, and the presentation of this that I won, I got around about £150 worth of Amazon vouchers. And it was £50 for runner-up, and then £250 if you won it. And I didn't really need the £150 Amazon vouchers because I need the actual money. So believe it or not, I actually swapped it with my colleague who had a stipend and things were fine. So look, can you wire me £150 through your bank, and I'll give you this £150 of Amazon vouchers, so then I could use that money to pay for my bills the next month. That's how difficult it got during my PhD. But I wanted to share this video just to give you an insight of potential ways that you may have not realized to try and earn a little bit more whilst you're a PhD student, because you may want to pay some more bills. You may have got a car because you needed to, or your rent has got a bit higher, especially in this current climate now, which is really awful for many people for many reasons. You might need a little bit extra income, so hopefully this video might help you. If you did enjoy it, do consider subscribing down below. Click that notification bell so you can notified or be notified. So I can notify you when there is a new video coming on, and if you could like it, that would be amazing for the algorithms of the YouTubes, so it goes further and many people might also benefit. And just to let you know, I do have an Instagram page if you are not aware, where I share shorter form content, Aamir.phd. And last but not least, I have a newsletter which you may want to subscribe to. It costs $0.000, pounds, euros, Canadian dollars. It's free, and you might gain some more insight into the other research tips and advice that I like to share. But in any case, I shall see you in the next one. Hope you enjoyed the video and enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.